It was 2:15 a.m., in the kind of suburban quiet that settles only when every neighbor's lights have gone out. The only glow in the Jenkins kitchen came from a phone screen and the small reflection of a woman's eyes behind tired lenses. Sarah Jenkins scrolled without meaning to, her thumb caught in the rhythm of sleepless distraction. Her coffee sat untouched, turning bitter in the cup. She was 42, a guidance counselor by habit, a mother of 2 by love, and a wife by what until today she had believed was unbreakable trust. The feed stopped on a stranger's post, a family photo, a cake with 10 candles, a line that read, "Happy 10th birthday to my husband's daughter from his other wife." Sarah blinked once. The words didn't fit. Her thumb trembled, scrolling back up as if the picture might change. There, standing behind the birthday girl, was Mark, her husband of 18 years. The same curve of smile, the same laugh lines she used to trace while half asleep. But what caught her wasn't his face. It was his hand, the wedding ring gleaming under the kitchen light in the photo. The very same one Sarah had chosen 18 years ago in a boutique tucked behind the old courthouse. Not similar, identical. Her stomach folded in on itself. The house around her stayed still. The clock ticked, the refrigerator hummed, the cat shifted on the couch. Yet it felt like the air had been replaced by something heavier. She opened the stranger's profile. A woman named Laura Myers. Public photos, family events, snapshots of what looked like a long, happy marriage. Behind Laura, the man who shared her husband's face stood in almost every frame. Barbecues, school concerts, holiday mornings. It wasn't possible, and yet every pixel said it was. The caption's date stabbed deeper, posted 3 hours ago. 3 hours ago, when Mark had texted Sarah, "Flight delayed, might stay overnight, love you." The phone slid from her hand, landing face down on the table. For a minute there was nothing. Not shock, not anger, just absence. Then came clarity, an almost frightening kind. Sarah picked up her keys. By 3 a.m., she was driving east, past the highway exits she'd never taken. 4 hours toward a city whose name sounded suddenly foreign, yet too real. In that pre-dawn blur, she rehearsed possibilities that kept shattering. A twin brother, a prank, a misunderstanding. Each one died before the next exit sign. The first light broke just as she turned down a quiet cul-de-sac lined with trimmed hedges and identical mailboxes. And there, neat siding, porch light still on, was the house from Laura's posts. A car's headlights cut through her windshield. She turned off the engine and watched. Mark stepped out, holding a cake box, the same one she'd seen in the photo. A girl rushed into his arms, laughing. A woman followed, touching his back as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Sarah's breath quieted to nothing. She didn't cry. There was no sound to make. The truth was a stillness that swallowed sound itself. For 11 years, her husband had commuted, not only between cities, but between entire versions of himself. 2 families, 2 houses, 5 children between them. One life built on rehearsal and routine. And somewhere in that silence, a part of Sarah, the part that trusted without question, ceased to exist. The next morning rose over an ordinary Ohio neighborhood. Sprinklers hissed across lawns, newspaper bundles thudded onto porches, and inside one of those houses, Sarah Jenkins poured milk into 2 cereal bowls. She moved through the motions with a mechanical grace. Her daughter Emily, 14, scrolled on her phone, unaware. Jack, 11, asked if Dad would be home early this weekend. Sarah said yes, because that's what her voice still knew how to do. To anyone else, this was the picture of suburban comfort. 2 kids, an open kitchen, the faint hum of a dishwasher. Sarah had spent 18 years building that image, filling its corners with stability. Mark had been her anchor, the dependable weight around which their lives orbited. They met in 1999 at a college friend's barbecue. She, the quiet one studying education. He, the charismatic IT consultant with easy jokes and a grin that could melt awkward silences. They married 2 years later, in a church filled with fairy lights, small-town optimism, and no shadows yet. Their early years held everything expected: a starter apartment, second-hand furniture, endless plans. In 2005, Emily was born. 3 years later came Jack. When they bought their home in 2010, Sarah thought they had arrived at permanence. Mark worked long hours, traveling often for contracts that seemed to send him farther every year, Tuesday to Friday. Always the same schedule. She'd kiss him goodbye in the driveway, watching his taillights fade, secure in routine. Her friends envied her calm certainty. There had been no dramatic absences, no strange calls, no lipstick on collars or misplaced receipts, just a slow shift in small things she had never thought worth naming. The phone change in 2009, his business line. He'd said new clients preferred text updates, that separating work from home would keep him sane. She agreed. It sounded professional, loving even. Nights alone had their rhythm, her grading papers at the kitchen island, movie sound low, his messages lighting up the phone with predictable warmth. Miss you. Tough meeting. Back Friday like always. She'd grown used to the pattern, reassured by it. In retrospect, it had all been choreography. Mark came home every weekend, like clockwork. Soccer coach on Saturdays, grill master by Sunday afternoon. He'd plan family picnics, buy flowers just enough times a year to seem thoughtful. Remember every birthday short of genius. He was the man every PTA mom wished she'd married. Sarah believed she was lucky. She believed he was tired because he worked hard, quiet because he carried responsibility. Love, in her eyes, was maintenance, not proof. He gave her normalcy, and she mistook it for security. The years rolled forward with the comfort of repetition. But repetition, she would soon learn, is the perfect disguise for deceit. Morning sunlight slid across the kitchen countertop as Sarah sat motionless, the phone again in her hand. She studied the image that had dismantled her world, this time not as wife, but as collector of evidence. Each pixel became a data point. She noticed the curtains behind Mark, pale gray, same as the photo from Laura's living room uploaded last Christmas. The kitchen backsplash mirrored the one pictured in 2016 posts. For 11 years, he'd managed 2 simultaneous calendars without collision. The level of planning was surgical. She opened Laura's profile. No lock, only curated happiness. Anniversary posts dated back to 2008. There they were in wedding attire, Mark's arm slipping around Laura's waist with practiced ease. Comment below, "Here's to forever, my love." 2008. The same year Mark's work travel had expanded. The parallel lines of his lies stretched perfectly. Sarah began cross-referencing timestamps, opening old saved messages in her own gallery. The week he'd said he was in San Diego for a vendor convention, Laura had uploaded a family beach shot from Myrtle Beach. Same week, same color wristband on his arm. She took notes, not because she yet planned retaliation, but because the act gave her control. An engineer of grief, she needed structure. That night, after putting the children to bed, she opened Mark's office drawer. Receipts, plane tickets, a neat stack of itineraries filed by month. She leafed through. Cleveland, Indianapolis, Cincinnati, always consulting clients. Some routes repeated, always to the same smaller airport near the second city. In a shoebox at the back, she found duplicate wrapping papers and 2 identical remote control cars, still in their boxes. The discovery struck harder than any confrontation could. This was not carelessness. It was system. Her phone buzzed. Mark texting his routine. Landed safe. Hotel's quiet. Miss you. She stared at the screen until the letters blurred. By Sunday night, he was home again. He kissed her cheek, dropped his suitcase, and asked how the kids were. The same lines delivered flawlessly. Sarah realized he didn't even have to lie creatively anymore. The script of his life had stabilized. Over dinner, he told a funny airport story. She laughed on cue, tasting ashes. He poured wine, complimented her lasagna, asked if she'd seen his gray tie. She nodded. Everything between them moved with the efficiency of a rehearsed play. When he slept, Sarah unlocked his briefcase using the digits of their anniversary. Inside, among contracts and invoices, lay an envelope labeled Business Account Statements. 11 years of monthly deposits, each $1,800, transferred like clockwork. The name on the receiving account wasn't a vendor. It was a joint account with Laura Myers. She copied every number, photographed every page. At school the next day between student appointments, she printed them quietly in the counselor's office copy room, fingers trembling only once. The printer's hum sounded deafening, but she pressed forward, page after page feeding through. Proof was oxygen. That evening, she spread the documents on the dining table after the kids were in bed. Each deposit aligned with travel weeks, neatly forming a timeline. The earliest dated to August 2008, the latest last month. She drew 2 parallel lines on notebook paper across 11 years and mapped both existences. Vacations, birthdays, tax years. Her family's photos filled one side. The other she filled with screenshots of Laura's public posts. The symmetry was sick beauty. 2008, Mark's first recurring trip. 2009, first daughter with Laura, same year Jack was born. 2012, second child with Laura. Gifts duplicated, holidays mirrored. There were even small echoes she'd never processed. That summer, both families had matching patio furniture. Mark had insisted on returning the first set he bought for being too big. Now she realized he'd ordered 2. The next Friday morning, she followed him. He left at 6 sharp, coffee thermos in hand, waved to Jack through the window. Sarah waited 5 minutes before starting her car. Distance became detail. She memorized every turn, every exit. 4 hours later, she parked down the street from the same baby blue house she'd seen before. He pulled into its driveway, removed groceries from the trunk, and greeted Laura with a kiss that lasted longer than any she remembered. She recorded the scene from her phone camera. No trembling, no commentary, just fact. At noon, a little girl ran out wearing the purple jacket that had appeared in one of Laura's posts. First day of 5th grade. Sarah whispered the words before the phone did. Slowly, her numbness congealed into another form. Not rage, calculation. Over the next days, she approached her motions with scientific detachment. Laundry done, lunches packed, emails answered, no hint. Even when Mark returned Friday, as if he hadn't just spent 3 nights living another life, she greeted him calmly. But one small change betrayed her. She began writing everything down, license plates, dates, names on receipts. Her entries read more like lab notes than diary pages. Her body cooperated. She smiled where necessary, assisted her children with homework, attended the PTA meeting. But sleep became a stranger. Each night, she replayed the double life in looping detail until morning light. On a faded Saturday afternoon, she visited her sister Ellen. Without explanation, she asked for the spare burner phone Ellen kept for travel. "Just in case," she said. She didn't elaborate. Ellen, sensing something wrong, offered to stay the night, but Sarah declined. Some revelations were private processes, cellular in nature. That night, she traced the bank routing number again. "Business account," the label claimed. The transaction origin changed locations twice, once every 6 years, but the destination remained constant. Central Midtown Credit Union, Springfield, Ohio. She checked branch addresses, cross-referencing them against public business registries. There, a property deed attached to that account. A mortgage filed jointly under Mark J. Jenkins and Laura Myers. Purchased December 2009. Her pen paused. 11 years of fiction had just solidified into land. She flipped to the last page. Payment source: automatic withdrawal from Mark's primary salary account. He'd been funding that second household through their marriage earnings, disguised as business expenses. Beneath the ledger, a notation in Mark's handwriting read, "Mortgage number 2, Springfield property," and below it, again, "Transfer $1,800 per month until payoff." The mystery of the deposits resolved into a pattern so clean it chilled her. An algorithm of betrayal measured to the cent. Sarah leaned back. The refrigerator hummed. A streetlight outside flickered. Her world had become a lab of evidence, each clue another cell under magnification. She did not cry. Tears, she decided, were interference. For 48 hours after the discovery, Sarah functioned like code running without awareness. She rose at her usual time, brewed coffee, packed lunches, answered routine emails. To anyone looking, she was unshaken. The stillness around her was deceptive. Her thoughts moved too fast for expression. She did not confront Mark when he returned Friday evening. She studied him instead. Posture, voice pitch, unconscious gestures, the way he loosened his tie, the rhythm of his breathing while pretending comfort. Across the dinner table, he thanked Sarah for keeping everything in order while he traveled. She smiled. It was easier than replying. Every word he spoke joined a mental catalog titled Fabrications. That night, he fell asleep beside her. Sarah lay awake, eyes open in darkness, listening to steady breaths. She imagined 2 versions of the same sound in 2 different houses. Which family thought it meant safety tonight? On Sunday morning, she dropped Emily at soccer practice and watched other parents chat casually about weekend plans. She nodded mechanically, tasting the lie in every friendly exchange. Home became museum, each object a relic from a personal history that no longer existed. By Tuesday, the mask began to crack. Emily noticed first. "Mom, you're quiet lately." Sarah answered truthfully, "I'm just tired." But her daughter's eyes stayed worried. That evening, she decided to explain. Not everything, just enough. They sat in the living room surrounded by soft lamplight. Sarah spoke calmly. Their father had done something terrible, something that would change things. Emily's face stayed blank at first, then folded into disbelief. "You mean he loves someone else?" Sarah nodded. Her hands trembled only once. She hid it under the blanket. Jack overheard from the hallway. came in silently and started to cry without understanding why. His body folded against hers, tears soaking into her shirt. She let them cry until silence refilled the room. The following day, she told her sister. Ellen reacted like explosion, shock becoming fury within seconds. "He did what for 11 years? She insisted on confrontation. Sarah refused. "No, not yet." Her tone was so calm that Ellen went quiet, sensing something larger assembling behind that stillness. Their father heard next. The old man's first impulse was protection. Drive there, demand explanation, threaten legal ruin. Sarah didn't permit it. The family's outrage became external noise, against which she measured her own precision. She was building something, though she didn't yet name it revenge. Mark's next return blurred at the edges of routine. He greeted the kids normally, complimented the meal, asked about school plays. Sarah watched, detached, documenting his behavior like an anthropologist. Every fork movement, every glance, compiled into internal observation. Her own body began to respond to invisible trauma. Insomnia, thinned appetite, focus dissolving into mechanical habit. She graded student essays as though reading foreign text. The printed words made sense without meaning. 5 days later, a quiet evening unfolded into revelation. While sorting tax folders, Sarah discovered a stack of insurance forms at the bottom of Mark's file cabinet, recently printed. She hadn't noticed them before, and the ink date was only 3 months old. She scanned the fields. Policy owner, Mark Jenkins. Beneath, primary beneficiary. Not her name. Instead, typed in neat print, Laura Myers. The room tilted slightly, her balance adjusted without movement. Insurance, the one financial thread she hadn't examined. The document contained confirmation. Not only had he created another marriage, he had made it financially eternal. Sarah reread every line. He'd declared himself divorced on the form, lied to the insurer about marital status, claimed residence at the second address. Everything filled with quiet fraud that future tragedy might have rewarded. Her fingers trembled around the paper. The betrayal had evolved from emotional to existential. She pictured scenarios, an accident, a fatal trip, a payout that would have gone entirely to this second woman and her children. The magnitude of calculation expanded beyond infidelity. It was estate engineering built on deceit. Something inside her shifted permanently. In those pages, she grasped the degree of Mark's contempt, not through insult, but through exclusion. She existed only as background function to his second, complete life. That knowledge burned colder than anger. No confrontation that night. She folded the papers back, locked the drawer, and stared through the window glass until dawn. By morning, the decision weight had changed direction. She was no longer victim examining evidence. She was architect assembling future consequences. The silence between breaths now contained design. She spent the day reviewing financial codes and insurance documentation online, learning procedural flaws and complaint channels. Each clause introduced possibility. The logic comforted her more than pity ever could. At school, colleague voices faded to background static. Students asked questions. She answered, composed. Inside, the mental map of Mark's deceptions was reforming into something actionable. When she returned home that evening, she felt strangely steady. Her reflection in the hallway mirror appeared colorless but certain. The phase of shock had passed. Calculation had arrived. Sarah Jenkins was preparing to move from discovery to reaction. Morning returned without apology. The sky over Ohio stretched gray, and Sarah moved through the house as if already half inside another reality. She had stopped wondering why. Questions were sentimental. She now dealt in how. Her first step was consultation. On a Wednesday lunch break, she sat across from an attorney whose voice carried bureaucratic calm. The office smelled like paper and air conditioning. "Ohio isn't a community property state," he said gently, sliding papers her direction. "That means assets are divided equitably, not necessarily equally. We'll need documentation, proof of fraud, commingled funds, dual properties." Sarah handed over a flash drive already labeled and time-stamped. The lawyer raised his eyes, surprised. "You've done a lot of the groundwork." "He's been paying another mortgage for 11 years, she said, "with our money." The attorney nodded slowly. "That changes things." They discussed options, divorce filings, civil suits, evidence chains. The legal explanations landed like clean cuts through noise. Yet one phrase kept circling: equitable, not equal. She realized fairness could still leave her ruined. That evening, she studied Ohio financial law until the room dissolved into legal jargon and half-finished coffee. The data hardened into resolve. If the system permitted edges, she would master them too. The next morning, Sarah visited a private investigator recommended quietly by her attorney. The office was in a converted brick warehouse. The investigator, an older woman named Dorsey, listened without interruption as Sarah described 11 years of deceit. "You're not here for closure," Dorsey finally said. "You're here for leverage." Sarah met her gaze. "I'm here for precision." Dorsey grinned faintly. "Good. Precision is invoiceable." Within days, the investigator returned with results. Property deeds, school enrollment records, utility bills, all linking Mark's identity to both households. Another surprise emerged. A third property, small rental unit bought under Jenkins Solutions LLC, the same business Mark used for freelance consulting. The purchase used marital funds. Sarah's signature nowhere in sight. Evidence multiplied like cells dividing. Then came the accountant's report. Numbers carrying their own secrets. By obtaining Mark's historic tax transcripts, Sarah discovered concealed benefits. For 8 consecutive years, he had claimed dependents from both households under different filing codes. Estimated gain: over $180,000 in improper tax credits. The discovery was no longer personal. It was prosecutable. Sarah's emotional pulse remained low. Outrage wasted time. She documented everything, rehearsing statements until her language matched courtroom cadence. She felt less like a betrayed spouse than an auditor cleaning a contaminated ledger. Another week, another revelation. Her attorney's tone sharpened when reviewing the insurance fraud evidence. He declared himself divorced. "That's material misrepresentation. We can report this directly. It could lead to revocation or referral." Sarah nodded. Her hand rested still on the folder. Good, she thought. Let it live inside official channels. As months of silence gathered around Mark's routine trips, Sarah expanded her surveillance. The PY installed passive cameras near the second property entrances. Nothing invasive, just documenting vehicles, dates, times. The timestamp logs formed yet another data line proving consistent patterns across years. Sarah now held a lattice of evidence threads, financial, geographic, temporal, all leading to a single conclusion: premeditated double life. But the most devastating secret arrived in an email from Dorsey one Thursday night, time-stamped 11:48 p.m. The subject line: "He's moving." Sarah opened the attachment. Flight reservation. Destination: Orlando International. 2 adult tickets, 2 children. Departure scheduled 6 weeks ahead. Employer line item, new transfer package. The name of the hiring firm matched one of Mark's existing vendors, Florida-based, newly registered with his signature as consultant onboarding partner. It wasn't speculation, it was plan. Her breath steadied. He wasn't going to confess. He was going to vanish, with his new family, salary, and assets, ready to let Ohio dissolve behind him. The PI's note beneath read simply, "He's set to list the Springfield house for rent mid-next month." It's his transition bridge. Sarah closed the laptop and sat still. The household slept upstairs, unaware that within weeks their father had engineered their disappearance from his spreadsheet of life. She rose, poured water, and stood at the kitchen window until dawn. Her reflection layered against the faint outline of backyard trees. She looked nothing like the woman who once packed his suitcase. She looked like consequence taking shape. Dawn arrived without fanfare. She called her attorney at 9 sharp. "We move now." "Divorce first?" he asked. "No," she said. "Divorce and discovery. If he's planning departure, I want injunctions ready. And inform the IRS liaison quietly about the duplicate dependence claim." The tone of her voice required no emphasis. It carried resolve that made her lawyer pause, impressed and cautious. That afternoon, Sarah typed instruction emails with surgical clarity. Dates, account codes, file paths, documented trails. Bureaucracy had become her language of retribution. When Mark texted that evening, "Can't call tonight, long meeting," she replied simply, "Take your time." Then she archived the conversation for record-keeping. Preparation was nearly complete. She no longer needed explanation or confrontation. She required confirmation of timing, nothing else. The clock now began counting toward impact. Friday morning began, with sunlight muted behind office glass. Mark Jenkins arrived at work the way he always did. Coffee in hand, smile rehearsed, unaware that his own routine had become trap sequence. At 10:07 a.m., a courier entered reception carrying a sealed envelope. His assistant signed, confused. Mark opened it just outside his cubicle. Inside, crisp legal pages. Petition for divorce and civil complaint for fraudulent concealment of assets. Filed that same morning. For 12 seconds, he didn't move. Then adrenaline replaced oxygen. He left the building without a word, phone already dialing numbers that would no longer answer. Sarah watched from miles away as digital confirmations lit her inbox. Documents served, timestamps acknowledged. The process had begun. Her hands remained steady over the keyboard, finishing an email to her attorney. Phase 2 executed. That afternoon, another domino fell. The accountant liaison sent notice to the IRS regional office triggering an audit request for multiple dependent claims under inconsistent filings. The sum total, $240,000 in owed taxes and penalties. 2 hours later, insurance investigators received Sarah's fraud report. The policy naming Laura Myers as beneficiary validated misrepresentation. Within a week, the insurer suspended coverage and referred documentation to the State Insurance Commission for criminal review. Each institution moved like machinery, quiet gears turning toward collapse. Sarah didn't witness the immediate fallout, but she could imagine the choreography. Mark driving too fast down the highway to Springfield, panic translating to sweat, keys rattling at the second doorway that no longer represented safety. By evening, Laura would open her own envelope. A courtesy notification from her attorney advising separation to protect herself from pending investigation. Sarah waited. not for satisfaction, but for equilibrium. The scale was finally aligning. Over the next weeks, stories unfolded in administrative rhythm. Mark's company clients began withdrawing contracts after whispers of tax irregularities. Professional circles are small. Rumors spread faster than filings. Discomfort transformed into reputation damage. Within a month, termination letter issued. Breach of ethical conduct. The planned Florida transfer evaporated. Emails unanswered, offer rescinded. The rental property, now verified marital asset, through joint fund tracing, went to auction under court order. Sarah's attorney secured full coverage of her legal fees from sale proceeds. Mark watched from distance as his additional income dissolved into ledger lines. Custody hearings turned asymmetrical. Evidence of deception erased his credibility. The judge granted Sarah sole custody of Emily and Jack. His visitation rights restricted under psychological assessment clause. Every sphere of Mark's life compacted per his own architecture of lies. Sarah did not gloat. Vindication felt like calm silence spreading through absence. People spoke of justice as heat. For her, it was temperature dropping until motion ceased. But then came the moment that defied prediction. Late autumn evening. The doorbell rang. Outside stood Laura Myers. No legal escort, no accusation in her face, only exhaustion shaped into composure. "You're Sarah," she said quietly. Sarah nodded. Words held little meaning. Both women stared for seconds that existed beyond time measurement. Laura handed her a folder. "I thought you'd want this. Bank records from when he lived here. I didn't know you existed. He told me you divorced him ages ago. Told me you were unstable." Her voice broke briefly before regaining form. "I finally checked the insurance file, saw my name, realized everything." Silence remained their shared language. Laura looked up again. "If it helps you legally, use it. I want nothing to do with him." Sarah accepted the folder. Inside, notarized statements, receipts, duplicate policy correspondences, material more valuable than apology. The alliance formed not through forgiveness, but mutual devastation. Two lives paralleled, finally converging in collapse. Over following weeks, Laura's cooperation accelerated final proceedings. Depositions completed faster. Contradictions in Mark's financial records surfaced sharply. By year's end, verdicts multiplied, civil damages granted, tax penalties confirmed, insurance license referral accepted. Mark now faced criminal investigation for predicate fraud. He moved into a rented one-room apartment above a downtown bar. Sarah learned this through legal correspondence, not curiosity. Emotion no longer attached to data. In quiet intervals, she began to rebuild small domestic repairs, paperwork adjustment, ordinary existence reconstructed from ashes. Her voice softened again, but remained low. The world didn't celebrate her victory. It acknowledged a correction. Balance restored beneath human tragedy. Winter came with its own form of mercy. Snow softened the streets of Ohio, hiding imperfections beneath white calm. Sarah Jenkins sat at the same kitchen table where everything started, grading student essays beside a lukewarm cup of tea. Life, after devastation, had resumed its rhythm, slower, more deliberate, but undeniably alive. Her house now belonged solely to her. The financial battle complete, title cleared, mortgage satisfied by settlement credits and restitution. College accounts for Emily and Jack stood funded for a decade ahead. Every number that once represented deceit now marked security. Mark existed only in legal footnotes. bankrupt, unemployed, renting the small apartment above that bar downtown. The criminal inquiry lingered like echo. No satisfying punishment, just erosion. Sarah hadn't spoken to him since final mediation. His voice existed only through transcripts where lawyers translated speech into clauses. She remained expressionless through them all. Laura, the other wife, had divorced him too. She relocated with her children back to Indiana, carrying copies of her own lessons. Their last exchange ended in something resembling understanding. Two women who survived the same illusion, each returning to build a quieter truth. At work, Sarah's discipline earned notice. The principal called it resilience. She called it adjustment. Promotion followed, a director role in student services. Order made sense to her again. In private moments, she felt an unfamiliar calm. Not happiness, something more intricate. She had learned that peace wasn't restoration of what was lost, but construction of what could remain. The night the divorce papers finalized, she sat alone in the dark, fingertips resting on the table's wood grain. Same place, same posture, different woman. She smiled once, small, controlled, because equilibrium had returned. Her heart no longer sought revenge or closure. It sought stability for her children and a version of herself unshaken by lies. Trust, she realized, doesn't die in one betrayal. It simply changes form. It becomes self-trust first. Emily learned from watching her. Jack stopped asking questions that demanded simple answers. They were healing out loud, slowly forming a family again, not defined by absence, but by endurance. And sometimes, at quiet hours, Sarah reread her own notes from those endless nights of investigation. Not to relive pain, but to understand how survival becomes design. The story could have ended in explosion, but it didn't. It ended in documentation, paper trails that rebuilt truth cell by cell. 11 years of deception exposed by one midnight scroll through social media. One woman transforming shock into strategy, grief into evidence, silence into justice. Maybe there's a lesson there about what betrayal teaches more than heartbreak ever could. It reveals that ordinary people, cornered by lies, can still engineer fairness from fragments. Sarah Jenkins never became bitter. She became exact. And if you've listened this far, perhaps you see something familiar. How small decisions reveal enormous truths. How one act of clarity can dismantle the world, yet build another. So tonight, as she places the essays aside and lets the quiet fill her house, know that her story was not unique. Deception hides often behind normal ceilings and polite smiles. What matters is what happens after discovery. The choice to rebuild rationally instead of burn everything down. She exhaled, looked out into the snow, and whispered what had become her silent mantra. It's over, and I'm still here. And if this story reached you, if it made you think or feel or wonder what truth hides behind other suburban doors, take a moment to leave your thoughts below. Share your own untold stories, and if you want to hear more like this, subscribe and stay with us. Because sometimes the darkest truths create the clearest light.